Welcome, everybody, to Synapse Philosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haig John, and have a very special day. We're starting off DD and BJ's 1906 book, The Science of Chiropractic. And we have Joe Foley with us, who has written this paper about the history of what's going on around that time, and he's got a lot of really great insights. So this is really very special, really, to have you here as we begin this. So Joe Foley, thank you very much. And could you talk about, what we were talking about before we started recording in
Sure,
this writing of BJ's?
sure. So this is from the Association for the History of Chiropractic. They publish a lot of the peer-reviewed history articles. So this was from 2024, so it's fairly recent article on the early chiropractic books. So the title was "The First Chiropractic Books: A Race to Lead the Profession." So as we started reading the 1906 book, which turns out to be one of the first books written, it's important that we understand the historical context of what was taking place with the Palmers. And that's what this article really goes through. The emphasis of the article was the modernized chiropractic had always been presented as the first chiropractic book. And we basically debunked that and showed that Palmer's book came out first. So that was a main part of
That's
this, was
great.
that Palmer's book was the first book. It came out before modernized chiropractic. But there was a lot going on in DD and BJ's world as they're preparing to do this book. And as we started reading it, thought to kind of do a quick review of that. So they were really challenged. The title of the article is The Race to Lead the Profession. The
Hmm.
Palmers were getting challenged. Why DD, founded chiropractic, and BJ, came on and they were working as partners. They had some real challenges taking place. In 1903, Sal Langworthy, one of the early disciples, he started publishing a monthly journal. So there was regular chiropractic, mainly marketing, but talking about the science and the philosophy of the chiropractic. And then Langworthy's backbone, which was this monthly journal, in 1905 started doing something called the Bohemian Controversy, which basically they discredited DD. They claimed DD was not the originator
Oh.
of chiropractic, that he was a fraud, and that in Bohemia, over in Europe, there were these traditional bone setters that were doing the thrust that DD claimed he originated, that they're saying DD didn't originate it, that he learned it from a Bohemian. And they went through for months. There was this battle back and forth in the Palmer's publication and Langworthy's backbone. And it was really going at the core of, was DD the originator of chiropractic? In the spring of '05, Langworthy Group puts in a bill in Minnesota to license chiropractic and give chiropractic its first legal standing, done by Langworthy, not the Palmers. And the Palmers actually fought against it. DD interacted with the governor. It passed both houses of the Minnesota legislature, and it was on the governor's desk to be signed. And DD Palmer went and spoke against it and asked the governor to veto that legislation. The governor vetoed it primarily because of medical opposition, but DD was opposed to it. Its language of chiropractic was different than what DD wanted, and the laws set up favored Langworthy's school over the Palmer school, just in their curriculum, their length, and their structure taking place. So then in the summer of 1905, A.P. Davis writes a book, and he says this book teaches you chiropractic. So here's a book for the first time that claims to teach chiropractic, and it's not a Palmer book. It's written by a student of D.D. Palmer, A.P. Davis. In September of '05, there's a trial with Whipple and Johnson in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and DD goes and testifies, and they lose the case. Things are starting to be a struggle for them, and a component of that. And same thing with the Minnesota law, was there wasn't really a book from the Palmers. Palmers didn't have anything to show what chiropractic was, what was their science, what was their philosophy, what was their ideas. They had no print media to say, read this, and here's our book, here's something that the shows we're a real profession. Chiropractic had only been around for 10 years, and just it hadn't reached that point where a book had been done yet. So they realized this. And then in October of 1905, Dede himself gets arrested. He's charged with practicing medicine without a license in Davenport. The death of his wife in November of that year and some other things, they were able to legally push the trial back into the spring, into March. But the Palmers were being challenged. They had significant opposition of were they the leaders of chiropractic anymore? They questioned whether they're even the founder of chiropractic, but their control and premise that they were the leaders of the profession was under significant problems. So one of the things they wanted to do was they decided, let's write a book. Let's write a book by the Palmers. They were partners at this time. They wrote it together, and this would solidify them as being the leaders of the founders and the leaders of the profession by finally publishing a book. Some of the information that was shared to you in the Word document, that kind of gives the history of the 1906 of when did they start advertising it and when was it marketed and that kind of stuff. I won't go into Haig, but that's something you guys can read about. But I think it's important to understand the threats that the Palmers had at this point and how important this book was. And as you read it, you'll see a little bit of inklings of them trying to establish themselves as being the leaders of the chiropractic profession.
I'm so excited to dive into it, and I appreciate that. I've been reading this PDF, and I read it. I have it here in front of me on my phone. I shared it to our group, and would you mind if I post it on our group page
Sure.
on Facebook?
Sure. I can't share the whole article because it's copyrighted by the
Sure.
AHC. The whole article has a lot of other details in there, but I was able to pull out bits about this topic of the 1906 book so people understand that frame of reference of the history of it so they know as they read it what was going on.
I think it's absolutely cool. I'm just pulling it up here on my phone again. I just lost it, but okay, we'll post that up here. Joe Foley, Timothy Faulkner, and Simon Senzon all had a hand in writing this article, and I really appreciate that. So leading us into here, we just had a good lead in. Could you imagine having the wherewithal and sticking to it? That you're getting fought in every direction, trying to you're losing your baby, right? And not and still standing for what you believe in. And BJ and Dee Dee really, could you imagine what would happen if they just gave up? Chiropractic would be gone, you know? Okay. Has
We
anybody,
should we should clarify the version that we're trying to read is the 1906 version that we found as a reprint by the Parker Foundation that as Joe pointed out to us last week, there were later versions of this same book that modified it in later editions. Isn't that right?
Correct. This is what would be considered Volume 1, 1906. But it was authored by Dede and BJ together, finished by BJ. Dede didn't have any say in the ending of it. He wasn't their partnership had fell apart at its completion, but BJ went back in, and the next version of Volume 1 was a completely different book. So this material only exists in this 1906 edition of Volume 1. It has not been reproduced in other editions until Palmer. And I believe Fred Barge gave Palmer a damaged 1906 that was, spine was broken, pages were there. Because to reproduce it, you have to damage the book. You got to cut out page by page.
right?
And that Fred Barge gave him a damaged copy in order to reproduce this book because before the Parker edition, it didn't exist. You couldn't get a
Another
hold of
big,
it until that point.
that's another important part of history. And so that was Fred Barge. I mean, that's, relatively recent. How many years ago could that have been, really? Where
You'll
this,
see if you've got the Parker edition there,
I,
Alan. When was that? It was mid 80s? Was
I
that
have it
produced?
right here. Unabridged 1988.
That sounds about right.
Parker Chiropractic Resource Foundation in 1988.
But on
I
the
don't know
next,
if that story is true, but that's what I was told was that Fred provided the material for Jim Parker to create this reprint.
well,
Yeah,
on the next
I
page,
found that on the Internet Archive, and they've got a whole bunch. not a complete set of all the green books, but a pretty complete set. There were 3 or 4 versions of this book, and so, but this is the one I posted to our group to be able to find the link to this one. So
Great.
Well, on the
wanted to
next,
make sure that people are trying to follow us and they're looking at other versions, that we want them to know what we did here. We
Go
went
ahead,
back to the
Alan. You were saying
source.
something?
on the next page of the book, it says the acknowledgement that this came from Doctors Vi and Art Nicholson. They provided the book for reprint.
Oh, maybe my story was not correct.
I like Gret and Barge.
Well, again, I believed it just
Yeah,
goes for history. Sometimes the story gets told and
that's
and
right.
it is not correct.
The good old grapevine, right?
But there's the next one. That's the 1910. So that's what that one looks like
Yeah.
on the spine. So that was reprinted in 1910 or 1910. Yeah, it's the second edition, but again, it's really the first edition of that context. It was not the same as the 1906 one.
Yeah, I got
This
a
one that I
red.
found has a red cover
Yeah.
online.
This one I bought while I was in school. I said, I bought answers and wasn't filled with answers, trying to figure out chiropractic. And then I said, well, let's go to the source. Let's find the earliest book. And the 1906, that's how came across this one. This is the same copy as I had in school, but I bought it brand new. So thank goodness we have these resources at our fingertips, really, be able to buy them new. And then, they've been digitized now, and that is just absolutely fantastic.
That's one of the challenges of, where do you start? It makes simple. Well, you start with volume one. You start at the beginning and you read through, and that's not what I'd recommend if you're truly wanting to study chiropractic. I wouldn't start with this one. There's other starting
Oh,
points
yeah.
to get you through, and then coming back to this like we're doing once you've got some knowledge and some experience is a good idea, but this isn't the place to start.
Yeah, we don't want to confuse early students, right? Just learning how to read and handle reading D.D. Palmer and B.J. Palmer, they are the comma kings, or the lack of such commas at times. We've had such long sentences from him. Okay, the beginning of this book, it starts off with a list of Greek words and gives us nomenclature, which in school, that's what, we started off too. We want to know how to decipher words, but I don't think we need to go through all of that. What do you guys think?
No,
Okay. The definitions he goes through, I think we should define chiropractic, and starting that way on page, I don't think this is paged yet. This is still in definitions. And then the preface. Okay. I think those are important pages, though. There's information about chiropractic. I'm going to start there, okay? Definitions. Historical. Chiropractic was discovered by D.D. Palmer of Davenport, Iowa, September 1895. The PSC has developed it into a well-defined science that has no resemblance whatsoever to any therapeutical method. I just have to change this and kink my neck. Any therapeutical method. Relief is given by hand adjustments that are unique and unlike any other used by any other school. Defined chiropractic. The science of cause of disease and art of adjusting by hand all subluxations of the 300 articulations of the human skeletal frame, more especially the 52 articulations of the spinal column, for the purpose of freeing impinged nerves as they emanate through the intervertebral foramina, causing abnormal function in excess or not enough, named disease. Does that, from 1906, does that follow along? Where have we strayed from that in any way? What do you guys think? I think it's still a right on definition for right now, a little bit.
that's what we believe. That's what those people in this group, I think, adhere to anyway.
Yeah, and it points out the emphasis is the spinal column, but it does say, there's other articulations of the human frame.
Yeah.
Is more than just spine, but it's certainly the emphasis is the spine because of the intervertebral frame and in the nerve system there.
And Dee Dee said, 95%. Oh, it's on the next page, as a matter of fact. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. All movements of or in the body, including circulation, whether normal or not, are but functions of nerves. An ache or pain is but the impression. Every act and thought is controlled by nerves. They furnish the life of the body. The body is heat by calorific nerves. Whether the heat is furnished by normal quantity, as in health, or abnormal amounts, as in fevers, excess heat, whether in portion or the whole of the body. We are well when the innate and educated nerves are free to act. Disease is abnormal function. Innate nerves control all vital functions of assimilation, circulation, respiration, as asleep or awake. Dreams are sensations of the innate nerves. Now, this is a part I was going to mention a moment ago. Diseases are but the result of impinged nerves. 95% of these are caused by vertebral subluxations, which impinge nerves. These displacements are caused by accidents or by poisons, whether introduced or introduced by inhalation, food, drink, or by the physician who inserts vaccine poisons in a healthy body. So we were talking, when did DD and BJ, did they talk about the V word? And, when did that start? And there are some early things, even of the 1906. I don't know, I've heard there was some prior to this of DD talking about vaccines, because they've been around quite some time. And, that's where we are right now.
Dede was opposed to vaccinations and wrote about it in the 1890s. It was
in the 1890s.
This was not new. Right when this practice first started, he said this is a bad plan, and was vocal about it and wrote about it in his publications, primarily newspaper advertisements where he was writing context. But this is not a new position for Dede Palmer.
So he was actually putting out articles of "Don't do this."
Correct.
Interesting.
Right.
Very cool.
Right.
Chiropractors use the long bones of the spinous processes as agencies to adjust these displacements by hand. By so doing, they release the pinched nerves. Chiropractor, one who knows the science of chiropractic and how to adjust by hand, displays vertebra of the articular processes of the skeletal frame. D.C. DC, Doctor of Chiropractic, the sign used to designate one who practices chiropractic. Treat, this is an important word that shows up a little too much. To care for medically or
he
surgically.
cites this as by the definition from Webster. He's
Webster's definition right now, 1906 Webster. To manage in the use of remedies or appliances as lation. To treat a disease, a wound, or a patient. Correspondent or comfortable. To bring into proper
that line is out of place. It ought to be after adjust.
After the just?
After adjust. The definition of adjust should read to make exact, to fit, to make correspondent or comfortable, to bring into
below.
proper
Cool.
relationship.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for pointing out. I did not catch that at all. Very cool. The adjustment, the name of the action of the chiropractor when he replaces displacements of the bony frame. Luxation, where two articulating surfaces have wholly lost their proper connection. Subluxation, incomplete, where articulating surfaces have, in part, partially lost their proper opposition. That grows over time, that definition, and it's descriptive. What do you guys think? It has grown quite a bit when BJ writes about it. Okay.
Dede's description is always consistent about the articular surfaces remaining in contact, or partially in contact, or disrelation to them. And I'm not sure that anybody else in chiropractic really at this period really is discussing it at that joint level. So it's presented oftentimes as bone out of place.
Yeah.
But DD's really talking about the articular, the joints. The joints aren't connecting. And that's really something that hasn't been explored or understood much of what truly what is he talking about there. And I found something recently that explains it a little bit more. In some notes written by him, he described a gap of the articular surfaces. It wasn't when they said they're not complete, they're not in juxtaposition. My brain couldn't really, those words didn't describe it, but I saw him describing it as a gap that the surface had gapped open, and that added a little bit more for my brain to see what was he talking about the two articulating surfaces have wholly lost their proper connection. If somebody else has a bet, what does that mean? They're in the joint capsule. They can't, truly dislocate.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems that he's describing in later years, I saw it described as a gap between the articular state that they'd opened up. Not really bone out of place, but a malfunction of the joint taking place.
Interesting. Because, we talked about quite a bit of how well-read DD was with all the medical literature, anatomy literature. He quotes books from the 1600s even in 1910. And, he was studying this as fervently as he could. And probably, I really say he's probably the most learned man in this level of physiology at the time. He studied everything that was out there that he could.
Yeah, well, you'll see lots of definitions from DD, and that articular surface is something that, again, isn't commonly used, as at least my experience, by others in chiropractic aren't really using that term. There is a osteopath that, interesting, defines a subluxation as a disrelation of the articular surface.
Okay.
So the osteopaths before this, the osteopaths in 1903, have a definition of subluxation, the term subluxation, and it is about the articular surfaces. So, sometimes people get ideas happen at the same time, and sometimes there's a sharing of ideas that take place, and that's yet to be determined, but that seems to pre-exist before DD's description of articular surface disrelationship. But I took a while for me. I still am not sure I fully grasped what he was talking about.
Well, I guess they were growing their own language too at the time, understanding.
How do you describe stuff? How do you put words to describe this concept?
Yeah.
Sometimes the words don't exist to articulate truly what he's trying to tell us.
In a lot of things that we've read over the years of DD and BJ, but mostly of DD and even Stevenson as well, where they were speaking in quantum physics without that. It hadn't even existed yet. Schrodinger's cat hasn't happened yet. And they were describing things the best that they could. And, we understood it for our level where we are at the moment. But, that's it. They were creating language to describe new science. That's just amazing stuff, really. Okay.
I was just looking up the actual definition of apposition. And it's that it actually comes out of terminology for in language and grammar, but it's the relationship between words and phrases, the active instance of opposing. It's specifically a disposition of successive layers upon those already present, as in cell walls. So he's talking about it's changing the normal position of the vertebrae in relationship to one another. It's apposition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's not any more defined than that, but any misalignment then becomes, the subluxation, because it's out of the normal relationship that would occur. There's some normal motion in joints, but once you get beyond that, then there's some other definition of.
I think we frequently like to use the term, it's out of place, and DD sometimes fuels that by saying I racked it into position and things like that. So there's this. But in his definitions, he seems to be focusing a lot on the joint, the articular surfaces. You'll see that mentioned a lot in DD's writings as he's describing the subluxation, and that's a joint issue, not necessarily a bone out of place. Although to have one, you have to have the other. If there's that gapping there, then the bone's position is going to be changed, but not the way that it's. Some people look at anatomically and they say, well, how can the bone move out of place? Because the facet joints are going to butt up against each other. It can't move out of place, and we get discredited as chiropractors saying the bone's out of place. It's a subtlety. That's where the sub of luxation is it's not truly dislocated, but there's an articular surface joint malfunction taking place.
Less than a full luxation.
Yeah.
One thing I'm realizing here too, as I'm rereading this over and over, it doesn't have a nerve component to it yet. When he's describing subluxation.
Yeah. In
Well,
his
he's talking
definition
as
above
he's
of
using it's
disease,
sub.
there's
Yeah.
Or
causes the vertebral subluxation, which causes impinged nerves. So that's up at the
Yes.
top of that page.
Yeah, that's right.
So there it does say vertebral subluxation causes impinged nerves.
Yes.
and they're very careful in this. At this point, it's still sub hyphen luxation,
Yeah.
Mhm.
not one word. So it's but even hyphenated or not, it's less than the complete dislocation. So that the slight misalignment can still cause the irritation of the nerves as we talk about as mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But subluxation, he's talking really about the bones themselves with that term. And the pinched nerve is that he talks about is a sequelae to that.
I'm going to start the next section. It says credit.
Do we want to read all his credits?
Well,
Just
I'm
a
not going to
thought.
read them all, but the first, how Samuel
Okay.
Weed is important. So I'm going to start with that one. Many authors of orthopedical work are referred to. I wish to thank each of them collectively. Reverend Samuel Weed, Mammoth, Illinois. Chiropractic owes many thanks for the uprightness counsel, close friendship, warmth, strength, sympathy, strong sympathy and interest with which he entered into the spirit of it from its earliest years. This educated scholar has advanced many ideas which were valuable and have been embodied. The care with which he has had presented to the reader a clear outline of the origination presented to the origination of the name chiropractic is the one of the many obligations I feel. So he's naming chiropractic Samuel Weed. That's one I really wanted to read. If you got, are there other ones you saying skip that?
I don't know how many of them we really need to
We
read.
don't need to really do them all. I wanted to really read Samuel Weed.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other one that really caught my eye was that he acknowledges his stenographers and typists, which is an interesting concept because nowadays we talk to microphones and record stuff and it appears as words. People don't even know. Young people probably don't even know what a stenographer is anymore. I presume everybody on this call does.
Yep. The other couple in there are osteopaths. There's reference to the osteopaths that have taken the course and the MDs that have taken the course.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge that. And the other thing about this little statement here too is this section here seems to be a D.D. Palmer written section versus a B.J. written section.
So, he's talking about the Palmer School. So he's talking in the, he's the writer writing about himself this time. To him, my earliest teachings, or I think some of this might be BJ, is it not? Talking about his father?
Thanks to the Professor Harvey. Professor Harvey served as an editor in there, but I think that would have been to BJ after DD left.
Okay.
So there seems to be a blending of content here.
Because at the end, he signs it in his salutations, BJ Palmer. See the Palmer School of Chiropractic. If any friends have been overlooked, it is because this has been written at the last time was an important factor of the early compilation of the book. With such apologies, I gain to express them all, BJ Palmer. So, it's you can almost feel like, you could feel the passion already coming out of them in the beginning of this book. We're just at the preface. Okay. Should we read this whole part or do you want to skip some?
There's some stuff in here about mixing in here.
I have it highlighted. Chiropractic is not a remedy. That's three, two-thirds down the page. But I'll read this whole thing. The object of this book is primarily to assist in placing chiropractic on a firmly scientific basis, and incidentally, to place within the reach of the humblest intellect the most effective method of adjusting the cause of disease. We do not expect to stand upon its literary merits, for if unsound in principle, felicity of dictation cannot save it. If sound is principle, homelessness is expression, cannot
Homeliness.
homeliness, excuse me. All right. If sound is in principle, homeliness
Homeliness of expression
of
cannot
expression cannot
destroy it.
destroy it. I'll get there. Our primary object is compiling these writings and offering it to the public is a response to an immense demand thrust upon us for the same, thus assisting to bring it within the domain of the exact science. This has never been accomplished is owing to the fact that no successful attempt has been made to formulate a complete work without any adjuncts, thus losing its individuality. In the following pages, I have attempted such a complete work as time aside from professional and school work has allowed.
I think
In
that refers to some of the stuff Joe was talking about earlier, that he's saying this is going to be a complete work, and everybody else that's written stuff is incomplete and inaccurate, and I'm going to tell you the real story.
Yeah,
Because it added adjuncts. There was adjuncts. The
adjuncts.
Davis was a book that purported to teach chiropractic, but it was also a whole lot of other therapeutic treatments and methods contained in there. So it wasn't a complete chiropractic works.
Yeah, so this is going is a response to this part, that couple of sentences in there is a response to that, saying, I'm going to give you the real stuff.
Right.
All right. In proportion as we gain knowledge of the cause of disease, we will not treat effects. All therapeutic remedies do that. Students that are studying the work for the special purpose of learning the cause of disease, to locate and then adjust, perhaps have the idea that you would add chiropractic to the therapeutic remedies that you have known, but just in proportion as you learn the cause of symptoms and know how to adjust them, the less you will use remedies. Chiropractic is not a remedy. You have been treating effects by the best therapeutical remedies that you knew. You are not now studying any remedy, new or old, but to learn the cause of our afflictions and how to remove them. You each desire at least such is imposed in the case to be the case, to learn chiropractic, i.e., the cause of all diseased conditions, and that you may the more readily know how to remove them. You will readily see the less you think of therapeutical remedies, let that be a hypodermic injection, suggestive therapies, physical culture, magnetic treatment, or any other means used for the ameliorating of diseased conditions, will not only occupy time, but cannot consistently think of using both. I have a mark on this part too. If it is better to know cause and right it than treating effects, we why not learn all we can of the former and quit thinking of the latter? I aim to be liberal enough to think that all modes of healing are therapeutical remedies. They are more or less effects on disease, on symptoms, but we are not studying any or all the remedy methods of treating effects. We are to learn how to adjust the cause of ailments, maladies, disorders, sickness, illness, complaints, and afflictions. The more you think of therapeutical remedies for the effects the slower you will learn how to adjust for ailments. In other words, the more you think of treating effects, the slower you will be able to take in chiropractic. The more tenacious to the old, the less readily you absorb the new. We do not blame you for selecting the best therapeutical remedy for disease conditions, for doing the best you could in the past, but we do pity you and the world that you have not sought after and long ago found the cause of ailments. You, my students, have this book for the purpose of learning adjustments and how to right the wrongs that cause our ailments. If you desire brakes on the wheels of progress to retard your development, and to those with whom you have come in contact, continue to keep your minds and others filled with remedies for symptoms. It is a positive fact in order to take in a new idea, you must drop the old. You must let go of opinions in order to observe and conceive new thoughts. To learn is but to change your opinion. In conclusion, I desire to say that I claim no credit for this work, other than that which is due to an honest scientific desire to promote the truth for its own sake. Sincerely believing in the absolute correctness of chiropractic principles, I have not hesitated to follow it for its legitimate conclusion in every field which I have studied. If at the close of this book you are more interested, I shall be glad to hear from you and will further your interests as far as correspondence and my time will admit by mail or personal attention as your teacher while in attendance at the PSC. I am perfectly aware that many conclusions reached in these pages are antipodal to preconceived ideas and for the purpose of establishing the individuality of chiropractic, I publish them. B.J. Palmer, D.C., the Palmer Chiropractic College, the Palmer School of Chiropractic, Chiropractic's Fountainhead, Davenport, Iowa, USA, 1906. That was worth reading to me. And hearing those early words of BJ, how old was he? He's in his early 20s at this point. Am I correct? You guys might. What year was he born?
81.
One.
1881?
Yeah.
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 So he's a young man at this point, right? So a lot of wisdom in there. And he's setting the stage. Look, you might have different teachings. Your educated tells you something else from the past. And he's already starting to say, we're talking about innate at this point. That's the way I feel from that.
Some of this is
Insights?
commentary towards the others from other health professions that came to learn chiropractic from them. That Palmer's thought once people conceived the superiority of chiropractic in the non-therapeutic model, they'd abandoned their therapeutic mindset in something that was far superior, and that in most cases was not the case. Most of them added chiropractic as a new technique or to their bag of tricks and
Yeah.
continued to treat in a therapeutic model with their lotions and potions and treatments and added a chiropractic adjustment along with it. And here he's pointing that out. You've got to abandon the old. You've got to let go of that therapeutic model in order to truly embrace this chiropractic idea. It's not treating, but it's hard to let go of that. It's hard to let go of those preconceived ideas for the purpose of establishing the individuality of chiropractic.
I can hear Sid Williams' voice in my head of literally saying you have to take chiropractic in full faith. It's in full faith, and that's when you see, the something extra. That's where you see the magic happens. And, taking this work in full faith, not adding what we've educated ourselves with, but understanding its tenets and principles. Wow. Well, we're going to pick up here next week. Okay. And chiropractic briefs number 1, and still not page numbers yet, but we're coming to that. But I think reading these, it's almost like the continuation. Dee talked in these ways with these epigram type of things at the end of 1910. So it leads me to believe, I may be incorrect, but this again, now we're getting to Dee, or is that?
This little section here is a lot of this was done in their publication called the Chiropractor, which was from 1904. December of 1904 through 5 was a monthly publication, and this style here of these um, little items, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom,
yeah.
boom. That's indicative of that style, and that was a lot of the content was reused stuff. So this was probably with a little bit of time, I could find this exact page in the Chiropractor in 1905, and they're just reusing material that had already been done.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. It's so important. I feel so fortunate of getting the history of things. You know, I have loved history. My father loved history, and you have to know what's going on in the time. And we've talked about it ourselves. What was happening at the early turn of the century in the United States and around the world? And you've got to know the complete history of a timeline. And I really appreciate you filling us in on a lot of that stuff, Joe and Alan for being here today. And I'm excited for next week as well. And I appreciate everybody. That was a lot of good stuff today. And Dee Palmer and B.J. Palmer's 1906 book. Anybody else? Any last tidbits?
Nope, that's exactly why I'm forcing the history conversations in our world. Is a lot of us know philosophy, we've got good technique, we have good business model. There's a lot of things it takes to be successful as a chiropractor. One of the things that if you think, hey, I know my history, or I know my philosophy, I know my technique, I know stuff to say, if you start looking at the history too, you start understanding here's the philosophy and here's what they were going through. I think that's a way to elevate your passions and energies and commitments to chiropractic is understanding what they were going through as people, and they're making this stuff all up on their own. This is written in 1906. Well, chiropractic's only 10 years old. Again, they're starting from scratch,
Yeah.
and they've really got a lot of things that have worked out and laid down. It still advances from here, but there's a lot that's there, and philosophy is great. And I know many docs who know, philosophy is wonderful. They know the 33 principles, but they don't understand what the Palmers were going through. And I think this is a powerful way to energize your philosophy for your practice, is understanding these guys went through this, and you wake up each day with that beyond just the philosophy, but you understand the personal component of it. I think adds to the energy that it takes to practice and see patients every day.
100%. And knowing our history and how important it is, it's really not a three-legged stool, it's a four-legged stool. And we've got to know where we've come from and know the history and the trials and tribulations they went through, what these men did to stand up for us and, for the denizens of the earth to receive chiropractic care.
Yeah.
And I feel blessed and honored to be a part of that. Everyone, have a spectacular night. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next Tuesday, and we're going to pick up right here, all right?
Perfect.
Good night,
Thank
Thank you
everybody.
all. Good night.